want to start by saying thanks to the Commissioner and to your team for the work you've been doing, starting with recognizing that in Exhibit 6.3 of the report being discussed this afternoon, you're helping Canadians to see that emissions have gone up in Canada since 1990, and actually we're the only G7 country for whom that is the case. Emissions in Canada, as of the most recent inventory report, have actually gone up 100 megatons since 1990. It was around 608 megatons in 1990 when we all decided we were going to start to care about the climate crisis, and it's about 708 megatons as of the most recent inventory report. Now, in your report, you've concluded that the measures the government has proposed to reduce emissions by 2030 are insufficient to meet their target between 40 to 45%. I'll note that that target doesn't follow climate science, that we need to get to at least a 60% reduction by 2030, but we have actually started to go down in the last year. It's a 7% reduction in the last year at least. Where I'd like to ask questions is about the measures we need to see this government taking to go further and faster. Because on one hand, we have oil and gas CEOs who were at the Environment Committee last week, and they made very clearly themselves to parliamentarians they have no interest in an oil and gas cap. They've got no interest in a windfall profit tax on their record-breaking excess profits. In fact, they have no interest in any additional regulations whatsoever. So that's oil and gas on one hand, significant emitter in this country. On the other, though, is that we have this draft framework for the oil and gas cap that has come out since this report did, and there are significant exemptions contained in it, including 25 megatons lost to compliance flexibilities, carbon offsets, essentially. And so, Commissioner, to you or Principal Leash, I'm wondering if you could share how important you think it is for this government to strengthen what was in the regulations, or if you can even speak broadly about how important do you see the oil and gas cap, this cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector, as it relates to making progress towards their 2030 target?
Thank you for the question. So you're absolutely right that Canada is the worst performer in the G7 since both 1990 and since 2005, the two baseline years. What is needed is a collection of effective measures that will meet or exceed the next target. We're not in the business of setting a target. You mentioned 60 or something else, but we're in the business of assessing performance towards the committed target, which is 40 to 45%. They need a package of measures, and it's their choice as to what the measures will be, that are effective and that will meet the target. How much they will get from each measure is up to the government to decide, but it has to be something that is at least 40%. And as I said earlier, because they've tended to miss their targets over the past 30 years, they may need to aim higher and then hope to get to the minimum of 40%.
And that's kind of my concern, is the aim with the oil and gas cap was to get 79 megatons of reductions. And with the draft framework that we now have, we're looking at maybe 34 megatons, so about half. So you're saying aim higher, and the draft regulations are telling Canadians that they're about half as much as they'd originally intended with the framework. Have you got any advice for government on the oil and gas cap framework, or any comment you'd like to make about that measure in terms of meeting our climate change goals?
Yeah, so if any of their measures is delayed or watered down in the consultation process, it means that all the more important to have other measures to fill in that gap. So if you diminish the scope of a measure, for example, as happened with the clean fuel regulations in terms of the evolution of that regulation, then you need to catch up somewhere else. We aren't in the business of prescribing what the full menu of measures will be, but the measures have to be in aggregate effective enough to meet the target.
Thank you, Commissioner. One last question is to Mr. Tremblay. I believe that my colleagues on the government side are well-intentioned in terms of working towards this target, and so I appreciate what we've heard from the Commissioner in terms of advice for them to work towards doing so. I know one of the critiques that the Commissioner has shared is a lack of coordination. And Mr. Tremblay, when I heard a colleague asking about that, I saw you kind of shaking your head earlier. And so could you maybe, I don't see it in this report, a response from Environment and Climate Change Canada. I know I'm low on time. And so could you table to this committee evidence that I assume you would purport to have that shows more coordination that the commissioner has said is really important for us to meet our goals?
No, the reason I was raising that is that there is actually a lot of coordination. Is it perfect? No. This is a complex issue that everybody is
Sorry,
responsible.
sorry, I apologize to interrupt. I just expect to be cut off very soon. I'd ask, can you table, I understand your position, can you table some evidence to the committee that demonstrates that what you're saying is the case?
We can respond by writing with some of the coordination that exists. Yes.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much.